You're probably expecting the final saga to be the best saga in One Piece, but there's 3 ways Oda could ruin it and the rest of One Piece. So I'm going to tell you where each of these mistakes has already popped up in One Piece, how it ruined other big manga like AOT, and how Oda can still avoid them. Also, this should go without saying, but this video is going to be loaded with spoilers. Now, the first mistake is retcons. Retcons are a sort of necessary evil, because sometimes your story is so long that you kinda just have to reorganize things. But it's generally a bad idea since it tends to just piss everyone off. And with over 100 volumes, One Piece has plenty of retcons. Now, you might be thinking that retcons aren't that bad, but the reason they ruin stories is because they create inconsistencies. For example, one of the biggest retcons in One Piece was the introduction of Haki. Some people like it because it balances the power system and it's consistent with the themes. Some people hate it because it ruined the power system. I actually kinda like it, but the fact of the matter is that Haki retroactively created inconsistencies. You have Shanks saving Luffy, Crocodile losing to Luffy, and Smoker and Ace never using Haki in their fight in Alabasta. In the moment these things are okay, but when Oda suddenly goes back and rewrites them, it undermines your memory of those moments. In fact, this happens just about every time Oda resurrects a character that seemingly dies in One Piece. The character will make this big flashy sacrifice, only to come back with ouchies and boo-boos. You get sucked into emotionally investing in these characters, only to feel stupid when that character comes back again and again. It's actually so bad that now people just expect it whenever a character looks like they're gonna die. But this is only the beginning, because the only thing worse than a retcon in the middle of a story is a retcon at the end that retcons the entire story. For example, quite possibly the most controversial ending in manga is the ending of Attack on Titan. There is a laundry list of reasons that I can't discuss in detail for spoiler reasons, but some of the biggest offenders were with Eren specifically. This is actually something I'm going to discuss more at the end of the video, but there was a retcon for Eren that made you just look at it and go, huh? Like, wait, what? This is why this happened? It takes a great first chapter and makes it worse, and it kinda makes me question the whole premise. Like, literally, what was the point of this story? And that is not a question you want to ask at the end of AOT. You want to read chapter 139 and think, how am I going to live without more Attack on Titan? Not, why did I ever pick up this manga? And you definitely don't want to read chapter 3157 of One Piece and ask yourself, damn, did I really just waste 10 or 20 years of my life reading this manga? So the big question is, how can Oda avoid making the same mistake? Well, the answer is really just don't retcon. Deadass, just don't retcon and that'll probably make everything perfect. Like, it's really that simple. Now, obviously, I don't believe there won't be any retcons. In fact, I can almost guarantee a few involving the One Piece, the Void Century, and Blackbeard. So, since there's probably going to be at least a few, it really just becomes a matter of Oda planning these things out. Thankfully, he just came off a 1-month-long hiatus, so ideally that would have been the time to do it. If he takes the time to plan out each plot point and make sure it's consistent with everything else, then retcons really shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now, before I give you the second mistake Oda needs to avoid, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far and you'd like to help share it to everyone else. But like I was saying, the second mistake Oda needs to avoid is, don't shit on your villains. Don't mess up their fights, and don't make them so OP that you have to beat them with some Mickey Mouse bullcrap. Of course, we know that this has been a problem not once, not twice, but several times in One Piece. The key thing that you'll notice, and the thing that I'm going to purposely point out, isn't that these solutions don't make sense. They usually do. It's more that they're just a little too convenient. For example, let's go back to Crocodile. Crocodile was the first Logia user that Luffy actually had to fight. Although there was also Smoker, but that actually just helps my case. Before Haki, Logia users were the most OP characters in One Piece. You couldn't hit them, you couldn't trap them. All you could really do was block and hope you had some kind of special ability. So when a villain like this was introduced, Oda needed to come up with a clever way for Luffy to overcome that obstacle. Which is fine. I honestly think the way Luffy beat Crocodile was fine. It makes sense that a sand user would be weak to water. It's only later when Oda introduces Haki that this really becomes a problem. But think about all the times in the New World that Oda has hyped up a new villain only for that hype to lead to controversy. Look at the Katakuri fight. We have Katakuri being set up as the better Luffy, Katakuri saying anything you can do, I can do better. Only for Katakuri to lose after he stabs himself and concedes the fight. Then you have Big Mom. Oh, she's unstoppable, nothing damages her. Guess what? Then she lost a kid-in-law. Then you have Kaido, the guy who never loses, the guy who was only scarred by Odin. And then he loses as soon as Luffy gets a new power-up. And again, I'm not saying any of these fights are bad. Big Mom was fine, Kaido was fine, and the Katakuri fight is arguably the best fight in One Piece. But these fights relied on complications that divided the fanbase. And while they haven't ruined One Piece yet, they will ruin the final saga. Just look at Madara and Naruto. Again, it's not that this ending doesn't make sense. I'm sure there's plenty of foreshadowing. But let's be honest here, let's be adults. The way Madara died sucks. It's dumb. I don't care that it makes sense, I don't care that it needed to happen. Madara was made so OP that this was how he ends up dying. And I think that's dumb. It's dumb because that's not why I read Battle Shonen, and it's not why you read Battle Shonen. I read Battle Shonen to watch big bad villains get hyped up and then get their asses kicked. I read Naruto to watch Naruto and Sasuke beat Madara after he was hyped up, not to watch him get backstabbed by a talking vegetable. I don't even like vegetables, why do you think I'm such a meathead? It's dumb, and it impacts how I look Madara in a negative way. It doesn't totally ruin the arc on its own, no, but it's another one of those instances where instead of being excited, I'm just sitting here like, really? Why did I bother reading the story in the first place? Why did I invest myself in this villain just for them to go out like that? And it's when you put things in this perspective that you can see how this kind of mistake could ruin One Piece. Because think about what'll happen if Oda makes Blackbeard too OP. I already know Emo's too OP. I know that's going to be some Looney Tunes Steamboat Willie nonsense. But Blackbeard is different. Blackbeard is a master schemer and arguably the best villain in One Piece. If Oda makes him so OP that he can only be beat with something stupid like, I don't know, the power of friendship, then it'll only make me question why Blackbeard wasn't able to plan for it, or why Blackbeard could steal devil fruits but he couldn't stop the power of friendship. So, how can Oda avoid ruining his villains? I know a lot of people will disagree, but the simple solution is to put fights first. I know this sounds dumb, but just listen. What happened in Wano? We had all these plot points from before and all these plot points that were introduced, and all it did was make the final raid messy. Oda was trying to address way too many things at once, and all it did was take away from the fights. Some of them were okay, but a lot of them were just way too short and definitely not what I or you was hoping for. So when I say put fights first, I'm not saying don't address plot points, that would be stupid. But Oda needs to plan out these big fights first, and then work around those fights. Avoid writing these last-second convenient curveballs, and just make good fights. If he does that, Oda can respect the expectations we, the readers, have for these villains and still address everything that needs to be addressed. But that brings us to the third mistake that will definitely ruin One Piece if it happens. The third mistake is shitting on your main character. The worst mistake any writer, I don't care if it's manga, comic books, movies, the worst mistake a writer can make is undermining all the work they've done to build up their main character. If I spend all this time following a protagonist because they stick to their goals or because they're badass, how do you think I'll react if they give up in the final arc or say something that completely contradicts everything they stand for? This hasn't quite happened with Luffy yet, but think about the reaction to his devil fruit. The fact that the Gum Gum fruit is really the devil fruit of a sun god that's in this eternal conflict with the world government. Even if this is consistent with Luffy's character, which it is, people already started going off, oh, Luffy sucks, Luffy's carried by fate, Luffy's Naruto 2.0, Luffy never had free will. Now, imagine if Oda writes the ending and somehow he takes the whole Joy Boy thing and the whole Destiny thing so far that it completely undermines Luffy's free will to the point where it's not even up for debate. All this would do is undermine my memory of everything Luffy has worked for. Whenever you do this, whenever you contradict how your main character has always been portrayed, it always ruins the story. Again, look at AOT, all of that convoluted stuff in the ending. All it did was leave a bad impression, because I spent all this time thinking Eren was a special protagonist, this badass character. Then in the final arc, all that gets swept away. There is even a panel where he is just sitting there throwing a fit like a literal baby. Even outside the context of anime, look at shows like Game of Thrones. Jon Snow, one of the main characters, total badass throughout the show. Then in the final season, he's basically a completely different character and even feels like a side character. It's another one of those things that just makes you sit there and go, why did I bother reading this story? Why did I bother following this character? To the point where you might even tell your friends, don't bother, you're just going to be disappointed. So this leaves us with the question of how Oda can avoid this with Luffy. Fortunately, he already kinda has. Like I said, the whole Joy Boy Destiny thing hasn't really changed anything about Luffy. When Luffy was fighting Kaido, that was still the same old Luffy. That was Luffy running around like a meathead. That was Luffy encouraging Momo and standing up for the people of Wano. And this is exactly how Luffy should look in the final battle. If Oda wants to take the Joy Boy thing further, that's fine. In fact, he has to since it's one of the big mysteries of One Piece and it ties into the Void Century. But what he needs to do is avoid turning Luffy into the actual Joy Boy. Like the actual person that fought the world government all those years ago. Because then it's someone other than Luffy, and that's not who I'm invested in. Now, on the flip side, Oda also needs to avoid portraying Luffy in a way that contradicts what he stands for. Don't make him suddenly want to be a hero. Don't make him suddenly give up on his dream. Anything that'll make us say, this isn't the Luffy that I've invested in. So, to recap, here's the 3 things Oda needs to avoid. Don't just toss in retcons, don't shit on the villains, and do not shit on Luffy. Even if he doesn't do everything right, the final saga will probably end up being the best we've seen. Now, that's all I have to say on the topic, so now I want to hear what you guys think. What are other major mistakes you think Oda needs to avoid in the final saga? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week in the next video. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.